Hey everyone, Emily Jashinsky here, culture editor at the Federalist, and I'm coming to you to talk about Hillbilly Elegy. Hillbilly Elegy was adapted by Netflix, directed by Ron Howard, starring Glenn Close and Amy Adams. It premieres tomorrow morning on the streamer. It was out in select theaters. Obviously, theaters around the country are struggling a bit still, but it was out in some theaters. The echo issue. The film is available on Netflix Tuesday morning. Again, it's star-studded. It's something that was directed by Ron Howard, obviously a very capable director. And I have to say, I have a review of that up on the Federalist right now. I have to say, unfortunately, that it's a giant missed opportunity. Why is it a giant missed opportunity? Well, that's what I want to get into right now. The movie feels, I think, sadly and unfortunately, like an after-school special, which is shocking for a film that was directed by Ron Howard and stars Amy Adams and Glenn Close, both two fantastic actresses and an excellent director. So they took J.D. Vance's memoir, which is a really, I think, complicated, it's this personal narrative woven together with a complicated cultural analysis. And you may remember in 2015, 2016, I guess 2016, when the book was published, it was sort of, Vance was sort of seen as the Appalachian whisperer by a lot of people in the political arena, political elites who were looking to explain the Trump phenomenon and wanted to have an easy sort of thing to point at. And Vance is even controversial in conservative circles, even though Hillbilly Elegy was kind of treated as this, like, I don't think it was treated as a pro-Trump book, but treated as a book that should be looked upon favorably by conservatives. It actually was kind of controversial, even in conservative circles. But there was something important about Hillbilly Elegy that the book does that the movie fails at, and that is, in Ron Howard's hands, Hillbilly Elegy goes from something that's focused on the broader culture, and I think does a really good job of using the personal narrative to tell a broader cultural story. It takes that. And by the way, Vance sort of uses like Rob Putnam-esque, Charles Murray-esque social science, and weaves that together with his personal narrative in a way to tell a broader story about communities in this country that are suffering, ravaged by bad trade deals and by addiction. And he uses his personal story to offer a window into that, which is something that, of course, a lot of people in the media and in elite corridors do not understand. Vance himself now is in walks those elite corridors, and he has a useful perspective, and the book provided that. But the movie takes what Hillbilly Elegy did and uses it just as a personal narrative. So this is just a story about J.D. Vance in Ron Howard's hands, which is fine. J.D. Vance has an interesting story, and it would be fine if the movie didn't feel, again, like an after-school special. I mean, it looks like a made-for-TV movie. There are some incredible moments of acting from Close and from Adams. Just, they give really piercing performances in certain moments of the film, because it is a film about addiction. It's a film about people suffering from addiction and divorce, and the loss of opportunity. It's all of those things, but unfortunately, it feels so cheap, and Howard does a beautiful job of capturing them. Again, in some of these key scenes, they're shot really well, but the rest of the movie, it's one of those things where it's like you can barely even describe it, because it's, you know it when you see it, but the level of quality in the film is just so low. It really does feel like an after-school special, made-for-TV movie, whatever you want to compare it to, kind of like Lifetime. So it doesn't have the sophistication that a film telling such an important story should have. This all gets us to the larger point, which is that beggars can't be choosers, right? So I'm among the chorus of conservatives who is constantly chiding Hollywood for telling none of the stories of people like J.D. Vance, and for ignoring the stories of people that elites don't really want to empathize with, and the elites don't really care about. And I'm like, I always say, some of these film executives should take up projects exactly like Hillbilly Elegy, and they should put, great actors and directors at the front of those films. They should put significant resources into telling stories exactly like Vance's. Okay, so it's, again, like, this is beggars can't be choosers. So should I be now complaining that Hillbilly Elegy is just a low quality film? Yeah, of course I'm going to complain that it's a low quality film, because I wonder actually if some of their nervousness or apprehension about adapting a book that the left really despises, and that the left is not really comfortable with spending resources on, is why the film was diluted from a cultural commentary to a personal narrative, right? Like, you cannot take issue with J.D. Vance's story. You can't take issue with what actually happened, because it actually happened. He did actually pull himself up by his bootstraps, so to say, and that phrase has become mocked everywhere, even on the populist right, and also over on the left. He did actually do that. And so if you're just telling J.D. Vance's story, it can't really be controversial. But when this project was announced, I mean, there was some pushback, and I'm sure they already experienced pushback in making the film while they were in the exploratory phase of that. And I wonder if the fact that this movie, which is a really rich, this book that's a really rich cultural commentary, that actually is a purposeful cultural commentary that actually wraps in social science and statistics and talks about the community more broadly through the lens of this personal narrative, I wonder if that was diluted because they were afraid of making it or being true to the cultural commentary aspect of Hillbilly Elegy. And that's really unfortunate, because, like, at worst, this movie gives people a sort of cheesy lens into, communities that they aren't familiar with and that they might have contempt for, or just have a very crude understanding of. So that's great. If this movie does that, fantastic. I'm happy. I hope that works out for them. And I hope that it changes some people's hearts and minds and leads them to see, what addiction does look like in some parts of the country. Absolutely fantastic. Great. But it seems like just such a huge missed opportunity that this film is A, so cheesy, and B, completely devoid of the rich cultural commentary that J.D. Vance very purposefully supplemented his personal narrative with. So at the end of the day, Hillbilly Elegy, I mean, it's not a good movie. It has some really good moments. The book is good. And I feel the same way I do about the book as I do about the movie, which is that, are there, maybe some reasonable critiques of it? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it did trick basically droves of educated elites into reading about the working class and to reading about the plight of the working class, especially in a key time in our country, and when all of those things are so essential to understanding our politics. So great. Like, that's fantastic. That's wonderful. But at the end of the day, I just wish that it were better, and I wish that it were braver. I don't necessarily wish that Vance were braver. His memoir was fantastic. And again, reasonable critiques of it, sure. But, he did a great job sort of supplementing his personal narrative with the social science and helping people understand why despair and hopelessness that afflicts so many people is, why that despair and hopelessness does afflict so many people, what it looks like, tangibly what it looks like. It looks like addiction. And it looks like painful divorces, and it looks like lost opportunities, jobs shipped overseas. Did a wonderful job of showing that. And the movie just doesn't. The movie doesn't even do a good job telling Vance's story in a compelling and I would say aptly sophisticated way. So it's kind of a bummer all around. Again, at worst, it'll trick more educated elites into considering the story of what's happening in the center of this country and some folks in the working class. But it's a big missed opportunity to do that in a poignant and more broad way. That said, while you're here, please subscribe. We'll be back we'll be back soon with more, and we hope that you subscribe, tune in, like. It really helps a lot, and you stick around for more content in the future. I'm Emily Jashinsky, and stay tuned to Federalist YouTube for all kinds of good stuff coming up soon.